What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Hollywood Already Did It, your weekly movie podcast about movies that have been remade, rebooted, sequelized, or otherwise not new. Of course, I am your host, Blake Schultz, and with me today is Zane Guzelderly.
Hello.
And we are here to talk about the second in a two-part series.
Oh, I wouldn't say that, Blake. This is the second chapter in what could be a very, very long, expansive Warner Brothers book that we're just not aware of yet.
No. This is hopefully...
Have you seen the Fantastic Beast films?
Yes, those weren't based off of one very long novel.
Although
it was based on one substantially shorter book in a film.
Mr. Skarsgård today was reported as saying that they have many ideas for a chapter 3 and that we should just kind of, be prepared for it.
Well, goddammit. Anyways, we're talking about It Chapter 2, a film that has no regard for proper grammar in its title. It, Chapter 2.
No.
It Chapter 2.
It Chapter 2.
The sequel to the first movie, the adaptation of the very long book by one Stephen King about a clown who likes boys and girls.
Well, actually...
And adults sometimes.
It's funny you should say that because the first chapter is that. It's that. It's about this killer clown that loves children. It's the back half of this book that I really thought they were just going to throw out going into it, which becomes so metaphysical and just so heady and large that, to just even tackle the idea of the deadlights, I thought was incredible. Because when you see them flashed inside of Pennywise's mouth at the end of chapter 1, and I was just like, oh, this might just be a thing that's in the background, but as Mike, who, went off into the wilderness and drank some some crazy shit, not even ayahuasca, just real crazy shit tea, and he was able to see exactly what these Native Americans had tried to do when they encountered this being, which apparently has been on Earth for millions and millions of years.
Right.
And that's just scratching the surface of it for the book. For the most part, that's the movie. I don't think that's a spoiler. Is that a huge spoiler?
I mean, it's the film.
Sure. Just let them know before they click on this.
Look, it made $91 million this weekend, so the odds are you saw it.
I just kind of knew what it was going to be. Like, there's just no other way to explain it or really do it.
Well, they took all of the parts of the book that kind of make the book without the expansion of Stephen King's various multiverses work, right? You had to have some sort of who is Pennywise and why is he here. You don't have to.
We kind of only get like a third of that.
Yeah.
Which I think this is what their chapter 3 leading into, like just exactly what Pennywise did at the circus or how this man came in contact with the shapeshifter being or whatever. I don't know.
I mean, they could now just do this through the ages. We could go back to the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, but you could do this forever,
years,
right?
Yeah. There's only so many cycles, but you're right.
Like, it wouldn't be that hard to just be like, it's a clown and it fucks up people sometimes. But you liked the movie overall? How did you feel about it?
No, we went and saw this a couple of days ago, and I've just been kind of thinking about it, but not in like an exciting and then every day I think about something new, because as I said when we walked out, there are enough dumb moments that are peppered throughout the movie which just annoyed the piss out of me to a substantial degree, where I should have been able to leave it alone. But much like Andy couldn't leave alone the editor, I just felt that there wasn't anyone on set to be like, no, that's just a step too far. And there's even, I will be honest here and just say that it's of the Stephen King books, I've not read it. It's quite a large task.
It's a lot.
I've started it a few times, but can never really get through it. I've seen the miniseries, which I'm not really a fan of, though I love Tim Curry's performance.
It's very slow.
Yeah, but this book is also, just has its moments where you really thought the film adaptation can, really harvest the best moments and make something that moved. Kind of like the same way that a lot of Crichton novels are made.
Right.
You never, ever really see 4/5 of his books in those movies. They take what is pertinent enough and kind of package it slick.
Well, that's the Jurassic Park thing. It's just a different story from the book to the movie.
And so this is a lot larger, but here's what I feel didn't need to happen in this movie, okay? All of the scenes with the kids, as much as I love those kids, did not really need to be in the movie. The kids had their own film. This whole book is about adult Mike staying in Derry because he has no other options and being left with the memories while everyone that went away they just forgot about it. Whether that's the magical allure that it has, if it's something that is deeper in Derry, whatever. This is Mike's story. And as you said, these producers, they do the character Mike so dirty both times.
Yeah.
We don't see him going after his Horcrux or whatever the fuck it is. You don't see... He sets it up, but then he just kind of falls by the wayside to let the bigger names in the movie kind of, like, really fill up the runtime unnecessarily.
Right.
And I keep seeing so many reviews that are like, it is just so long, and I love to champion a 3-hour movie when you earn it. Like, Endgame, to me, as a Marvel fan, earned it. This was just like, again, there wasn't someone there to be like, no, like, let's stay on track here.
It would have been really easy to get 30 minutes out of this movie that I don't think you need.
That's
because I'm in very much the same boat you are, where I'm like, man, I walked out of that movie and I really liked it. And that is because on the roller coaster ride of a movie, I will forgive your average parts to bad parts of your movie if the ending is great. And the last 30 minutes of this movie, when they're fighting Pennywise and they're adults and they figured it all out, and their performance, I was like, what, this is all great! Good dialogue, good twists, good emotional stakes, the CGI is on point, but then, like
You're talking about the first one?
The end of this one.
The end of this one,
yeah,
okay.
Like the last 30 minutes. Basement, down to the well, forward.
Got it.
I'm in. And then I get up and I'm like, wow! Then, like Pennywise himself, I have forgotten about the trauma that was the 45 minutes of let's go get the thing. This movie devolves not just into a, like, let's go get the MacGuffin and go. It's 7 of them.
Yeah,
but we
don't even see the majority of them. We
right.
just linger on the big stars again because James McAvoy is in your film. We now have to give him these scenes. Again, I haven't read the book, but I have done a little bit of my due diligence before coming on this podcast, and so I know what the bigger variations are, which I consider those to be more spoilers than anything else.
Right.
And I didn't necessarily mind them. It was also the other moments in the movie that I thought were completely jarring and out of nowhere that are actually in the book. Hence the gay bashing, beating, and then almost drowning in the opening to, like, start it. And that's the problem with this movie, is a part 2, it had, like, 3 false starts to me, where it just couldn't get its bearings and start running. And it's, you know, we're seeing the scene from the end of the first one, but now it's extended. And, like, so we're seeing them talk a little bit more about it, and I don't know, I just didn't know, like, how to grab hold of it. Also, seeing Pennywise, like, bite into a 30-year-old gay man,
right,
kind of goes against everything I've seen in the first one. You were the one that had to be like, well, look, it's been 27 years, and he lost to those kids,
well,
so he's hungry, he'll eat anything. Even
in the book, it is... children and adults go missing, but the children is so much more because the kids are easier to scare, so they're weaker. So the reason that scene is in the book is to be like, it's homophobic and the gay bashing, and this guy is now
also
afraid.
Came out in the middle of the 80s, so it makes sense in the context of the time that it was going on and just everything else.
Right.
Which, I mean, they're past when the kids are in it. It's the 50s, correct?
Right.
And that they've just, you know, changed that slight variation to just kind of adjust.
Which I'm glad that scene is in there, but it is a pretty nutty way to kick off a movie.
It's also, like I tell you, there's 100 ways to do it. That was the wrong way, in my opinion. Like, I understand that, like, people are awful and will do this to, you know, someone that they find, you know, their lifestyle is uncomfortable. But at the same time, too, it was like, what point were we serving to, like, beat this guy up, have his lover witness it, and then just have it come and take a bite out of him and just be like, It's
and that's kind of the problem, is I believe that this scene is so much earlier in the book because they're cutting up the past and the present, right? So to show it there is this kind of introduction to Pennywise, and then you later learn, like, oh, well, you know, it's da-da-da-da-da. But since we've had a part 1 that was, like, so kid-focused, and they never really bothered to tell you, are the parents aware of it?
They're just creepy. The whole movie, they're just creepy, and they're side-eyeing everything, but...
And you can do the due diligence of going, well, there's a curfew at 7, so everyone's aware to not be out past 7.
Well, because these kids are missing. Like, because this is, like, it's in the graph of all of that.
Yeah, but I think, like, the step deeper is... everyone knows that that's when he's out.
You also made another point when we were talking about this earlier where you're like, well, that's why Eddie's mom keeps him inside. And I'm like, I don't know that. She never fucking said anything like that. gives him pills to make him think he's sick and weaker than he really is, to control him, because that's kind of like, that's going to be the female characters in Eddie's lives. You know, we get a glimpse of his wife, which I love that they cast the same actress. I thought that was
a very, very good move.
Great move, right? We're just going to start stacking up good against bad, and that's just how I feel about the movie.
Well, it's a perfectly fine movie. It's getting mostly like 7s right now, and I'm like, if I gave numbers,
comparatively, it is really good. There's a lot of shit out there in horror that comes out every day. God bless those independent filmmakers that want to do something and be successful financially.
There's more good in a movie than bad, but I think whenever there's a movie that has those, it's like a mole on a face. And I could sit here and be like, wow, 90% of your face is flawless.
Can we get you in to see someone? They just...
You know what I mean? It's like, you know, I mean, I've got a mole on my neck. It's the first thing I see in the morning.
Look at the size of the one that was on Tom Holland's chin. Did that thing stay around? No. You become Spider-Man and they give you the best doctor in the world. Not just Beverly Hills, not just London.
A lot of people don't know this. He's going to have that mole back now that he's with Sony only. Well, that was Disney money.
That's how they're going to differentiate the different universes of this kind of multiverses of Peter Parker. But back to this clown
this scene, right? Man, that gets into some. I can't believe nobody my last sidebar. It kind of surprises me in a world of shared universes and connect everything that no one's been like, let's fucking go for this and connect all these Stephen King things like in the books, and we'll have the Deadlights in the Dark Tower and the Deadlights and Pennywise and
Christine and The Shining, the Overlook Hotel, and there's all of these things. There's the Shining ability on its own. I mean, I love it. And if anything, this is a really good Stephen King movie.
Oh, yeah.
Because you can tell when that guy is like high on coke, when he's drunk. You know, when things are just kind of going a little crazy, and sometimes it works to like whatever he's doing in the moment, but I feel like Andy loved this book so much that he wasn't willing to let go. He maybe add a little bit, but it's like, no, it has to be like this, and it's like, I bet if Stephen King was here, which you did have him on set at one point, another great cameo, you know, just reel it back just half a bit. I want to go find the Paul Bunyan statue attacks Richie. And just see how pivotal that is in a book, because you're talking about really great CGI at the end of this movie, which there is. A lot of bad CGI
trash throughout the rest.
Like what? Did we have to cut and lock this print a week before the fucking premiere came out? Guys, you guys made more money than God. You had more time than you needed, and it looked lazy at times. It looked like shit. It
mostly looked bad.
It looked like more of the CGI from Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark was more complete.
Yeah.
At times. That one also had its own problems, but even went to using the practical. That's where, because ultimately, like with the first film and this one, the moments where it's like, and now it's time to be scary, they introduce a
normal thing to be, and then it twists.
Like the old woman. The scariest thing that ever fucking scared me in a horror movie was the decrepit old woman that got out of the bathtub in The Shining. And in this trailer, when we see Jessica Chastain talking to this old woman and her rummaging around in the back naked, I'm like, she's going to attack her. And it's just going to be an old woman that just looks all scabby and nasty. Instead, it turns into like a 3D old Walt Disney cartoon. That type of look at what we're doing here doesn't scare me. It's cartoonish.
Or even and this movie also, we could have scaled back the comedy in it a lot too. But there's another scene later in the movie where they repeat the not scary at all, very scary doors.
The 3 doors.
And they open up the very scary one and there's a big jump scare. And then they open up we'll do the very scary one instead. And it's a Pomeranian dog. And the joke that Bill Hader made was he's going to
I'm not going to fucking fall for it.
Was his true form going to be some Pomeranian dog? I would have laughed so much harder if you just be like, I'm not falling for that, and close the door. But we have to have this
dog turn into a decrepit skeleton monster that lunges at them and looks like yet again another Nicktoon cartoon that's not.
It looks like a 3D weasel from Who Framed Roger Rabbit in 3D.
Maybe it scared the children whose neglectful parents let them watch this. But I'm like, you get to do this moment. It can be bloody. It can be really horrifying, shocking. It could be a flash cut of something that's just really depraved. And we're just making these Dr. Seuss-esque fantastical creatures that look poorly CGI'd.
Right.
And just move weird for the sake of looking spooky, but it doesn't do shit for me. It really takes me out of it. I'd rather have it be like Sarsgaard putting his makeup on and ripping the scars
that
into
was
his face.
great.
Incredible. scared the living shit out of me for just a brief second. But you also touched on it too. The first movie had a lot of humor in it, but when the serious moments were happening, they knew to leave it serious. This one gets into the look, they love the humor. So after a character gets a knife in the mouth and then takes that knife out and stabs a character attacking him with it, he's going to crack a joke. No, he's going to be in horrific pain and scrambling to get out of there. You're kind of missing the mark. You didn't have anyone there to pull you back.
Right. So I'm going to go all the way back to that gay scene we were talking about.
I'm over. I don't want to talk about it.
I know, but we didn't wrap up our point, and we can't just spitball scenes or our listeners will get lost.
I guess.
We get that note often when we just ramble. But that scene doesn't add anything to what Pennywise is doing. Because,
he's just back.
Right. There's no like, well, now he's attacking these people for this reason, and the rules are different, and ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. And that becomes kind of the problem with all of these issues. These 7, whatever totems don't add anything to the characters. We don't learn anything new about Pennywise. Some of these things they're connected to are just random items from this movie.
We had to make up in part 2 because we forgot this is how we were going to do the movie. We didn't plan it beforehand. And then even then it's like, okay.
And it is misbalanced. We spend like 10 minutes chasing Ben around the school and then like 30 seconds on somebody else. And it's like, well, we don't need to see Pennywise chase him around as a kid when I know he's fine.
The other thing is, these events are happening in kind of like a short time frame where it's almost like, can Pennywise like be in multiple places at once?
Well, that was my other confusing part when they were like, we weren't together all summer, and then we went to go find out all of these like short stories they had, but the first movie made it seem like he punched Richie in the face, and in like a few hours we were all back to like, he got Beverly, let's go.
Yeah.
Was there a week of time that
it's kind of made unclear. And of course everyone's like, well, just wait, let him have his 6-hour release, and you all can go have that because I think I'm good.
Yeah.
It's one of the better Stephen King adaptations.
Oh yeah. I mean, some of these
incredible
are very bad adaptations that exist.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm talking about.
But yeah, there's stuff that we like in this movie.
Sure.
The acting.
Bill Hader.
The character. Bill Hader steals the whole show.
It's so unoriginal to be like, oh, he was so good in this now because it's all anyone's talking about. And I was really going in to be like, okay, whatever, let's go see Bill Hader be great. And I was like, man, he was fucking great.
Well, that was the thing, is we kept watching it almost like with my arms crossed, like, we'll see. Everyone's saying how good Bill Hader is, but he's just being Bill Hader. And then you get to like that last few scenes with him and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's like he's going to be in everything now and I'm not upset by it.
Oh, that's fine.
It was, I mean, like, I haven't
wrap up the next season of Barry, take the show off, and let him be a movie star.
Yeah. Jessica Chastain and McAvoy, like, they've been in big things, some of them successful, some of them not as of recent, but they were all pulling their own weight for as big of stars as they were. I felt like they had enough screen time.
Yeah.
Even some of the more, we cast this actor for how well it represents the kid, like, they were all A-class in my book. I was like, no one was like, I had to cast this ditz, but it's like, oh, but he looks exactly like the kid. They didn't have to do that.
Right. And you said something after we saw the movie that I liked a lot, where a lot of people are like, well, they don't have very good chemistry. And you were like, well, they have been separated.
For 27
years.
And if the magic is working as Pennywise wants it to be, they don't have any fond memories of each other.
They don't have any memories of each other.
It really is in the Oriental restaurant. Well, Jesus Christ, listen to me. The Chinese restaurant, whatever it is. It's so stereotypical when you see this, like, outline.
Oh,
you think it's the Jade Dragon Gardens or
and
something.
it looks very like an 80s restaurant. And I was like, but now we're in 2019.
Right. Which I'm sure they have those, like, in the Midwest, up in Derry, Maine. It's like, of course, you could find a Chinese restaurant anywhere that's American Chinese food.
Right.
It was this, like, they had to work to kind of get that collective memory back. And I remember that's kind of how it was in the miniseries and the parts of the book that I did read, because, like you said, it is cut together so frequently, like, the past, the present, everything, so forth.
And that was one of the things I liked that they did with that, where I think in the book and in the miniseries, it is just like, it's magic of Derry, and Pennywise is Derry, and Derry is everything, and when you leave, you almost forget that it completely exists at all. And this movie made it more kind of like, well, maybe it is just the trauma and they've like blocked it out. Like when they leave, there's a few lines of, oh, well, now I can remember more. Like, why is that? And they're like, well, either we defeated it or now we want to remember this. And I was like, oh, I like that there's growth behind that change now. It isn't just like, well, the magic is gone.
Right. Yeah, and
The spooky magic.
Or like even like you to your credit, you're like it's really kind of baity to be like, oh, Beverly's seen how we're all gonna die, but then we don't.
But then we don't do
She's not
anything.
gonna say anything. She just happens to know how one of the characters, see, there we go, I won't say that, who kills themselves and is choosing to take themselves off the board, so to speak. When they get that call, it's like, in the bathtub? And they're like, how did you know? It's like, I've seen how we've all died. I'm like, okay, that's cool, but
how?
now just tell us, especially if the magic is ended and now it's like, it doesn't matter. That just could have been really cool scenes to see older versions of them dying at, different points. Or like not showing certain ones because, maybe this future interaction with Pennywise, we're not all going to walk away from it. So there was a lot they could have done to heighten the stakes and even do a little, like, I wouldn't say fan fiction, but like a little bit more character service.
Yeah.
Because I felt like you're right. There were just so many people there doing so many things that we robbed a couple of them and almost didn't need them to be there.
Like Mike, and here's my totem. I've had it forever.
Oh, hey, Mike, you were gone for 45 minutes there, but good. You had your little adventure. You've been here the whole time and at the backbone of this mission, but good, you've got your bloody rock. Good, great.
Other characters that we could have done more with or just cut out, the bully, whose name I've already forgotten.
Oh.
And he shows up twice and it's kind of interesting, and then we just wipe him out, and I was like, well, we didn't really do anything
and that was one thing that was like, it was another scene that was at the start of this movie, was him surviving the fall from the first chapter and him walking back into town and the police being there where he's already killed his father and them arresting him. It seemed like they already had that footage. That is really like how you put that at the end of chapter 1 and you know that he's alive and he's locked up and he may come back. But this was like, now we're going back to do this and now he's alive. And
there was a lot of previously on moments that weren't in the first movie.
Which makes me think that they'll be cut out and just put in the original moments where they should have happened in this longer cut.
I imagine that's what it is, right? That's this like super 6-hour cut.
Because you're right. We watch like 3 scenes of like previously on chapter 1 and it's like, I just watched this last night. Like I did the fucking homework and now here I am getting cliff notes before the test.
I mean, you might as well just do a Star Wars opening and give me a crawl and be like, it's been 27 years. And if you may remember, I would have preferred that.
And now we had to digitally re-age Finn Wolfhard because we're going to make him look like a cake just with perfect frosting and his little perfect childlike cheekbones and glasses. He is a CGI character sitting around real children at one point. It's jarring.
It's really a shame when you can walk out of a lot of Disney movies and be like, look at this de-aging technology, and then you get somewhere else and you're like, oh no, they not.
Went to the knockoff company, clearly.
They did not get $4 billion movies.
Let's just cut this scene out because we gave young Richie a whole fucking movie.
That's where I keep going back to. I'm like, I didn't need to see the kids until the ending.
Blake, the only reason they have the fucking scene is so they can establish that they had some cool underground clubhouse that will later be fit into a nightmare that looks cool cinematically, but does nothing for this. Nothing. They also wedge in one totem because they didn't know how to take care of the dead character. It was like, what the fuck is this?
This shower cap.
Now look, I plead ignorance. I didn't read the book. If you're telling me that this is exactly how it was in the book, well, then maybe it wasn't that great to begin with.
I was going to say, maybe I'll argue.
We're all a little high on clowns and Tim Curry to think that this is the greatest thing, but studios don't do big budget horror like this anymore. When we get it, it has to be almost bootleg off of Redbox.
Right.
And the story and the actors are never there. We're getting some of the best actors working in a high budget movie with like, they're really fucking throwing money at it. They should have thrown a little bit more or done a little bit less, but we're not going to get anything like this except from this company. One more time. We'll get Dr. Sleep at the end of the year. I'm not going to rope in the Joker. That is now like the new Godfather, apparently. I haven't seen it, but we're all about to have our heads blown off.
Well, hopefully not.
I mean, oh God. I didn't mean it like that. God, what an age we live in.
I know.
But it's cool to see that horror saving and keeping one of the oldest studios in this town alive. I mean, if it wasn't for La Llorona and the other Annabelle 3 that came out, this, Dr. Sleep, and again, I'll say the Joker, but if we don't want to, that's fine, it doesn't really matter. That's where the money is coming from. Right, and it will be rated R, because it's gory and it's grisly. It's like they kind of know what they're doing.
Well, and it is also nice for, like...
in some areas.
Right.
Not everywhere.
As big as Disney is getting, and everyone's like, well, it's too big now, and we won't get movies like ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. Here's a studio making you the R-rated movies that you're asking Disney to make while also not wanting Disney to have as much. So I guess go see the other studio's R-rated movies.
Is that why Juice Newton's song was in this fucking movie? Because it was in Deadpool? Is that the only reason we get 3 seconds of this song out of nowhere when Eddie's getting vomited on?
This has been bothering me ever since we saw the movie. And if I could sit down in a room with Andy Muschietti and ask him one question, it would be, why is that song there for that small amount of time?
Like, they had to pay a lot of money to have that 5 seconds.
It's bizarre.
And it does nothing. It's not a callback. It's not the character's favorite song. It doesn't enhance the moment. It is a total... You're just sitting there like a dog with a cocked head going...
Yeah.
What happened?
I was almost wondering if he felt the scene was boring and was like, do something weird to get the audience back.
Cut the fucking scene out!
That was another long walk to his totem. That was another one to be like,
here's a scene that you didn't know Eddie had... that is super long, and now adult Eddie has had to go back because his totem is an inhaler and it's not a stash inhaler.
I think the reality is that the back half of the It story is just go kill the clown, and they want to pad it out. I think the book wanted to pad it out. I think the miniseries wanted to pad it out, and this does. The story is the kids, and the adults is just your Return to the Jedi. All we have to do is go kill the fucking guy.
That is the worst
go
part.
kill the fucking guy.
That's the worst part of the miniseries.
Because it turns out that the totems don't matter.
No. Well, they might have if they were able to capture it the first time.
They don't matter to this story.
Yeah, they really don't. Or these characters, some of these characters, like it's just like...
Turns out we could have just bullied Pennywise to death.
Right. They did not think to do that sooner. I have no, like, clever, but remember this line of dialogue because it's all just kind of stapled together.
Which, to be fair, you'd think that would have kicked in the first movie because all Billy does is be like, he's not real. None of it's real and none of it matters. You'd think that would have...
But I'll tell you though,
in.
This whole, like, relying on this old ceremony and this drum that we're going to catch them in, and then that reveal, spoiler, at the end where Pennywise is like, you didn't tell them the whole tale, did you, Mike?
Great.
And I was like, oh my god, you let us down here and you were lying to us, and that's what this scraped side is, and I was like, again, there was enough of, like you said, they stuck the landing.
Yeah.
They just like lose form gliding through
in the
air.
middle.
They just look like a wet noodle, but then they stick that landing. And it's a shame that the only thing we're talking about is longer cuts of this movie instead of a more condensed... How about a 4-hour cut of both movies?
I would be okay with that.
Not 6, 4. We do 2 and 2, and that way we take out all of these unnecessary bridging scenes because, again, we're just watching one movie.
Yep.
Maybe re-edit it and have it be like, you know...
That's what I imagine the supercut will be, is them cutting in. Because there was some...
It doesn't need to be 6 hours.
It doesn't. There were some, like, also awkward edits where I was like, oh, this is to go back to the kids.
Yeah.
And instead you're just
to go back.
Yeah, like
no other purpose is served.
This cut exists here because in your like master cut, this is where we'll go back in time. But that's going to really mess up your first movie, which didn't have awkward cuts to allow to come back. So we're going to do a lot of fade-ins and outs. We're going to start doing some side wipes like old George Lucas.
It's funny because I don't think I was on here for the first episode podcast.
No.
It was just you and Terrence.
Me, Terrence, Adam, and Andres.
That's right. It was all 4 of you. I remember listening to it, and I just agreed with so much of it because I was like, well, we'll have to wait and see this part 2, but yeah, it was really funny and not as scary as I wanted it to be, and kind of like all over the place at times, and I would have taken out this rock fighting scene and the blood in the bathroom, we have to clean this up montage. And now, like, It 2, Chapter 2, is guilty of all of the same things.
Yeah.
I guess just because I was prepared to be like, well, that's what it's going to be, I just dropped the bar a lot lower. It doesn't excuse it, and I think it's totally just off.
The first one, and I wanted to bring this up more when we were talking about the box office, but the marketing for the first one, because it did less money, the marketing machine for that first movie was like 45 times what the marketing was for this one. We had haunted houses. We had audience reactions. We had red balloons everywhere. We had articles about balloons popping up.
Bus ads that just had Georgie in the raincoat.
Yeah.
And like the iconic clown in the sewer, and like not even you didn't even
and
see
just
his
like
face.
Very like modern types of advertising techniques. Everything was interactive. Everything was social. Everything was sharing. You had a haunted house at Comic-Con.
That 16-bit game that you like. You walk in the sewers, and that was like a bonus thing on their site.
Yeah, like it just was firing on all cylinders. Like part of the reason it was that big was because you couldn't look left without running into a clown on Hollywood Boulevard for 2 months before its release.
Their money this time around because they just did a third, a fourth.
I think they just sat on the laurels of it was the highest opening for an R-rated horror movie ever. It still is.
Yeah, but
this is, I think, second or third. I haven't looked.
It's second. The Nun is now right behind it.
Still wild.
Nuts. I mean, in the last 5 years, it's clearly emerging that we can do big R-rated horror. People show up
with like a superhero level budget and almost more of an adventure-y tone. Yeah, you can really kind of build in. But I think that's part of the challenge of adapting such a big book. Because we've now done this twice. And the first time...
you're talking about the miniseries.
Yeah, we have now adapted it twice. The first time... What is it? 5-6 hours altogether. Yeah. Each miniseries episode was an hour long.
That's where a lot of Stephen King novels that are that big find a life are in these expanded limited series. They're still doing them now on
He
Hulu.
prefers the Shining miniseries over the movie,
it's trash. Don't go and seek it. He hates
bizarre.
Stanley Kubrick, and you should watch the original. But that's neither here nor there. You're right. Have you seen the miniseries all the way through?
Yeah. For it?
Yeah. And I remember kind of watching it on CBS when it was being broken up into parts, and you could watch it, and it was like edited. And trying to watch it when the chapter 1 had come out, I was like, I'm going to do this. Not even an hour, and I'm just like, there's just no need for me to do this.
It drags and it gets really repetitive.
That's how the book is at parts.
Yep.
And that's how this movie is at parts. And that's just kind of looking at the product. And I know some people are like, it doesn't bother me. I'm not bothered that, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is 2 hours and 47 minutes. To me, that flies. It's a slow death to a lot of other people.
Well, this also, and I know we've spoken to the beginning before, and it is like a lot, but it didn't irk me. Like watching it, I was like, this is crazy. And then we go to Jessica Chastain's abusive husband, and then we go to the suicide scene. And each of those scenes, while it was like taking a minute to find its
James
footing.
McAvoy jogging across the Warner Brothers lot.
Right.
I'm a writer for films now.
Like all of these were, write a fucking ending. Like everyone in Derry has written a goddamn novel.
Right, yeah.
Even when Mike says it to him, he says it to him like a mentor who's like, good man, you finally figured out how to end a book. Like everyone can do.
Yeah, everyone
Get the fuck out of my face.
Everyone talks down to Bill, and it's hilarious.
It's
nutty.
It's so much.
He doesn't get anything except for a story in the end.
And it's supposed to be like a joke since they changed the ending from this book, and Stephen King's books sometimes don't have a great... Fine. We really gotta bash it over the head, though, with 18 fucking times?
I'll tell you, though, we've already moved... We're well beyond spoiler territory now.
I would say so.
I recently learned that this little bit was added, that at the end of this movie, you see young Finn Wolfhard scratching something into a bridge, and then later Bill Hader goes back and, like, it had been painted over, but the scratch was there, and he re-scratches and it's his plus Eddie, his initial. And he's secretly... still a closeted homosexual. Pennywise knows this and like threatens him. He's like, I know your biggest secret, and it's so interesting.
Yeah,
as they play on that. I'm a heavier fellow myself, so all of the fat stuff like really got me, and I just couldn't help but think. I was like, imagine if there are any like closeted guys in this theater right now. This is their biggest fear. And it's cool. They play on claustrophobia. They play on being burned alive, drowning. Like, I don't know that the book takes it in such great depths, but, like, they kind of found everyone's fear and, like, twisted that screwdriver at it for a brief moment.
Yeah.
And that's fun. When we're like, we're going to everyone will be afraid of at least something, especially if clowns isn't your thing.
That also does a good job of going back to Richie in the first movie when they're like, well, what are you afraid of? And he's like, oh, just clowns.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, that's not very interesting.
Right.
And like, oh, well, it was a lie.
It adds to Bill Hader's performance.
Yeah.
And it adds to their relationship, especially because the other character never really knows to some extent.
Right.
While we're in spoiler land, do you know if Eddie, not Eddie, what's his name? Or no, it is Eddie.
Eddie? The one he has a crush on?
Yes. Did he die in the book?
Give me 2 seconds.
In the
here.
miniseries, they all come together and defeat the spider in a very boring fashion.
Right.
And I know that no one dies there. Eddie literally has this moment in the film where he thinks he's won, and just this one of his, because he's not even a full spider. He's half clown, 1/3 lobster, and 1/3 or crab rather, and then another half like spider. And those fractions don't make sense. He does. Okay.
He does.
And it's great, because it's just like, they never talk about Richie's own sexuality in the book, other than a few lines of just like, and they always have that kind of like back and forth, oh, fuck your mom, and oh, hi, I know you're gay, just like kind of that regular camaraderie. So it was kind of sweet in a way for them to end it the way that they do.
I thought it was great.
And Mike, he packed up his car, and Bev and Ben are just going to go fuck on this boat while that dog watches. And Bill is still just left with a good ending now, because let me tell you, it's not that great of an ending. On the page, it doesn't really work.
I know how I'm finishing my book now. That's a trope I'm very tired of, is whenever there's a writer...
the writer who solves his own dilemma.
Yeah, and that is like, I know what I'm doing for my next book.
What about your troubled relationship with the wife we saw for one scene? Or the Peter Bogdanovich director cameo where he's like, look, kid, you suck, but the studio has to use you. Like, your story's not over. We're going to have a lot of that guilt-ridden conflict in his own, career. And Chapter 3, Pennywise is still alive in Bill.
I don't want more.
It'll be like the Nutty Professor 2. But you haven't seen either of those, have you?
The Nutty Professor films?
Yes.
I've seen those.
Oh, that was someone else I was talking to.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think you touched on, though, a good part of, what is scary now. I feel like a lot of times when people review horror now, they're like, well, it's just not scary. The Halloween remake just wasn't scary. And movies just aren't scary anymore. And I'm like, well, one, we're adults. And like Pennywise, he cannot eat adults because it is harder to scare them because they are adults. So I think, or you heard it with Us and Get Out and all these other places, but you kind of touched on well, now it isn't about the jump scares or things like The Ring that are just eerie. It's hitting these personal
You liked what
beats.
I said about Us. That was your biggest thing.
Yeah.
I was the first to be like, what a totally non-scary movie. And then my realization, if I woke up in the middle of the night and it was me with hollowed out eyes and a red jumpsuit about to kill me, I'd be terrified, especially if they knew what my next move was going to be.
Right, and that's always kind of the hard part, is now it's well, think about this situation.
Put yourself in it. Really try to
Mike Myers is walking through anyone,
always
a man.
Scared me, dude. He doesn't move quick. He's indestructible. He's dodgy.
Right.
It always scares me. So when you say that, I was actually very afraid of the new one.
I hear the right noise in the apartment when I'm going to sleep, and I'm like, well, that's it. Somebody's in here, and they'll just kill me when they get up here.
So if anything, you're really brave to sit through these movies and be like, nothing. But we all know how you get when you get home alone and you're jumping at noises in the night.
Well, yeah. Well, and it's wild to me that people now are like, well, I just don't think it's a scary movie. And I'm like, okay, fine. But that's also sort of walking out of Superbad and be like, it's not funny. And it's like, no, it is funny.
It's just, yeah, right. It's just maybe not your brand of humor, but you can't deny all of the laughter that you just sat through, or the jumps and scares that you see about people around you. Granted, some people are just into a little bit more. They might play it up a bit, but I mean, you're still having that kind of just jump.
Oh,
and that's why you're going, and that's why everyone goes, and that's why it makes money.
I prefer it, things like this, Stranger Things, Halloween, Us, to a Conjuring, it's gonna be jumping, and then we're gonna show you a very gross thing. I'm like, oh, well, yeah, it's that's just being on a roller coaster. If I know the roller coaster, I'm like, here comes the drop. We did it. We dropped.
Yeah.
And now we're done. But if you can really stick me with fucking a bad song, I'll remember your movie forever, whether or not you want me to.
Or you shamelessly rip off one of the most gruesome moment from a John Carpenter movie.
What the hell?
It's your own. I know that you knew, and everyone is like, well, it's an homage to the thing. A head gets cut off and sprouts into a spider, and then Bill Hader literally delivers the next line as follows: "You gotta be fucking kidding me!" Just like in The Thing. And then they have a whole bit where they're trying to kill the head. It was so just like you could have done anything else. I get it, Andy. You love the Thing like the fucking rest of us.
Another moment, though, where I'm like, just take it out.
Exactly.
Just take it out.
There's shit that happens before that moment, and then endless amount of scares and stuff that happens after it. Just take it out. This is your, now your wet dream fantasy and making a horror film, which, again, the highest grossing horror film ever. Who's going to say no to you? And that's the problem.
Right. Yeah, I felt like this movie learned a lot of the wrong lessons from the first one. It was like, well, if we crank up the comedy and we crank up the weird creatures, I just want to see Bill Skarsgård be a great fucking Pennywise.
And he is.
I want to watch that forever.
He is.
He's so good at it.
Yeah.
And I want to watch Bill Hader. I want to watch all of these. You had such good children, and now you have such good adults. I want to see these character moments, because I feel like even the novel and the miniseries is more, and most of Stephen King's writing are like character-driven things
always.
with a horror backdrop.
Which is why the endings always work. It's always a twist in the narrative where the father has to kill the son, or
Right.
they're left with that ultimate decision, and it doesn't mean shit if you don't do the 100-page journey between the beginning and there.
Yeah, and I want to see that more than I want to see the twisted dog and the weird woman.
Right, I'll hand it to him. Like, some of the scenes did emphasize their friendship a little bit more, and they were those scenes with the kids, but they were even onto it when Pennywise wasn't trying to scare them at the Chinese restaurant, when they are at this haunted hotel. That's another thing I was going to bring up. They're all living in this hotel, but
with no one
else
in it
works there. Right. I never.
The whole town feels abandoned in this movie in a weird way.
Well, and just like Jessica Chastain going to visit her own home and then leaving to see it be condemned and locked up, and that was all Pennywise magic. Is like, well, is that what is going on in this hotel? You'll never get an answer.
Is
to any
now
of this.
the whole town just
a decrepit shell that's being run by this energy source? But then again, a lot of these characters are still living there. But, I'll say my mom grew up in a small town. I was raised in that town in, summers and whatnot, and it was very much like a typical Americana, one main street town. To go back now, a lot of the same people are still there, but there's no upkeep. A lot of the video stores, half the stores are closed. Amazon's sweeping places like that out. So I get the decrepit deadness of it, but I don't know, just give me a fucking bell clerk and someone to check them in.
something.
Just anything to just string this together a little bit better, because the transition and the cuts are just the hardest thing to keep up with.
I also don't know that I really buy that they all just found rooms on the same weekend.
Or gave up their lives
they weren't
for a week and a half to travel to Derry.
Yeah, they weren't traveling together.
No.
They all abandoned something.
They did.
When James McAvoy was on that movie set and then got the call, I was like, they're not going to let him just leave this film set for a week.
Tomorrow, Blake. They're shooting it tomorrow. It's just, yeah.
Weird little things like that where I was like, well,
we're all having fun. You're all having fun on set, right? Even the script coordinator and the editor. Everyone's having a lot of fun.
Look, the movie isn't bad. No. You just gotta tighten some of those screws and cut 30 minutes out of it.
That's how I feel. Because even then it's like, oh, here comes a new weird metaphysical creature that, again,
well, that was the other thing. For a monster that can be anything and do anything, we kind of did the same trick a lot.
The fortune cookie baby
that was good.
Were weird. They were a little too out there for me.
The CGI was bad, but I appreciated them doing something that wasn't just like, and it popped up. We had the homeless man popped up, and then the person came out of the lake and popped up, and then the old woman became something that popped up. I'm like, okay.
Recreating Beverly and scaring Ben.
That was great.
But again, when did that even happen though?
Yeah, again, that is when they were like
Pennywise, the shit was still going on.
We cut back to him punching Richie, and I was like, well, no, the logical thing to do to be like, well, we weren't together all summer, and then just be like, because a summer is 3 months long.
Yeah.
And we could have just maybe you all went on vacation and I was alone, and then there was that week where Beverly was alone. But no. In this time that the first movie made seem like 3 hours, it was, in fact, so long.
Yeah.
There was time for Richie to go be harassed in an arcade, and time for Ben to go to school alone.
I don't know.
Time for Beverly to move to an entirely new apartment location.
Yeah.
Out of the bloody sink house.
Because it was a house, right? But then they're like, no, it was this apartment. It was
just
up from the side. I'm like, well, because we've never set up the geological location. I just got them throwing off their bikes into the lawn and walking off screen. it wasn't like I legit thought it was a house too, and then like I guess no, she always lived in an apartment, and they just never established.
It seemed like it was a different place to me. I don't know.
No, it did. I had to actually look that up because I was confused.
But it was this. It is the same.
I believe so. Yeah.
I don't know
because she hides it in the wall, in the socket.
Yeah,
so it would, like, need
but
to
I
be
thought
there.
they implied that when they were
After-
separated, that they had moved. Because time is meaningless in Derry, I guess.
Maybe if you had read the books, I can't answer it.
It was, there was a lot of just small things where I was like, this is,
These are all questions we'll get to in It Chapter 3. What happened in Beverly's move to this new apartment in downtown Derry?
Yeah, and then the HBO Max miniseries to fill in all of the gaps.
Mike is having to run this whole poultry farm after his grandpa
Who's
dies.
been living in a library for years.
I want to leave, but don't have anything. Get in your car and go, Mike. What are you doing? I have to be the one to remember. No, you don't.
Well, you could have all just forgot. I think that would have been fine, but the movie still went on to make $91 million.
Oh, for its opening 3 days.
For its opening 3 days.
Which I believe that's just domestic figures, too.
Yeah.
It will go on to crush worldwide because there's nothing between now and October that I can, like, be like, oh, The Hustlers is going to be out, and Jennifer Lopez is a force to be reckoned with.
That'll do the damage.
No. It's going to sit on the top like it did last time and collect its money for a month.
Ever.
Yep.
It'll sit here forever. And you're right, it is the second. It is the first R-rated horror movie opening, followed by It Chapter 2,
The Nun.
Halloween 2018,
Halloween and then
Us, then The Nun.
Oh wow, Us beat it out too.
71 mil.
Because The Nun sucked. And
Right.
Us and Halloween were much better films.
I would say all of the movies above The Nun are better films.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But right now it's just Blumhouse and Warner Brothers that can
Right.
pull it off. I'm sure Lionsgate and you know
So
they want to.
Are we now at a trend, and I'm asking, I don't actually know, are sequels making less than the original now, or is it still the expectation that your sequel makes more?
Well, the trend is Stephen King, which is always good.
Right.
That's
I mean,
what I think. I know,
overall
I know
box
what you mean.
office.
And this is, I think, where word of mouth and critics start to impact it because it wasn't all, like, glowing reviews for It Chapter 1 when it came out. A lot of people were burned by the marketing and, like, got left with a kid adventure that was funny and less scary.
Right.
So when they heard that kind of first word of mouth, I bet it impacted them like it impacted me. I wanted to go, but I know a lot of people that are like, I'll just wait. The first one really wasn't for me. And I think you really have to make that amazing movie that not only satisfies the critics and the executives and the mass general audience to, like, do a great sequel. But that's the fatigue now, right? I mean, you're in business in this podcast because of it, and now that's the number one complaint I see. I don't go to the movies because none of this is original. It Chapter 2 is just it again. They saw it. You got a different ending with better adult or older adult actors. Not better necessarily. I mean, that's a fight worth having. But, you know, that's what it is at the end of the day. And I just think that the idea of a sequel cozies up better to an executive than it does a regular theater goer.
But even for the book is one thing, we have to separate it. This isn't a traditional sequel. This was baked into the premise of the first movie.
You know, in that case, you have to do it a little bit closer with one another, like Infinity War and Endgame.
Yeah.
You know, like this was this traditional 2 years, and they weren't thinking about the sequel before they got into it. I mean, if you wanted to, it could have just been it, and it bombed, and then Warner Brothers was just like, look, we're not going to do any more of this.
Right.
It was huge. But while it was baked in, and I knew that it was too, they weren't brash enough to call it Chapter 1.
No. They did at the end.
That's right, they did do it at
They
the
do
end.
it at the end.
Well, you know, that's true.
Yeah, this was from the beginning.
Also, when you start just, like, being like, and there will be more, people are like, to what end? Marvel lost half of their audience midway through and regained them through the likes of Taika Waititi and James Gunn and random directors doing crazy
that's
things.
a much different thing to analyze. Ant-Man to Endgame to Thor to this.
I think it's like, look at the Conjuring universe. Like, yes, those are making money, but, like, to diminishing returns. And people aren't, like, going like they are with other big franchises that are like, I just kind of look at it from that umbrella of like, well, which one's like Hobbs and Shaw. I can't believe it did as much as it did.
Still making money.
I kind of left those movies after
Most,
3.
if not all of our movies this summer that have crossed $1 billion are remakes and sequels.
Right. So I don't know, maybe I'm completely full of shit, but I see it as people get excited for that big opportunity to go see like a movie they think is like, whoa, that's the movie. And
to counter that, though, also almost every original property this summer has not made money.
You know, I mean, that's in itself is just like, yeah, theater going is down. And tickets aren't readily, you know, cheap enough for everyone unless you can get on a plan. But then a regular person that goes and sees 2 movies a year is like, why would I give AMC $25 a month? For me, it's like a steal. I go all the time. I get the money's worth. The points, it all adds up. But I understand it, and there are just so many options at home now. I like to be home, too. I'm not going to say, like, oh, the theater. Sometimes I just don't go to the theater, but I go enough to keep the lights on. I think a lot of other people do because they like that, but
I think it's that smaller marketing push. I think they really just were like, It 1 came out and did huge. We barely need to do any work. They really only played 1 trailer. All of that interactive stuff is gone. They closed out the corner of Hollywood and Vine for 2 months and had a haunted house there for it. And there was no Comic-Con presence. There were no red balloons anywhere. That's your biggest thing. You think it's marketing. But then can we say that marketing is just down for all of these smaller films that have come out and haven't done their own thing? Some of them, yes, some no. Yeah, I mean, I think
Booksmart definitely needed it, but where was the money going to come from? You know? That's it. And I think you're right, because if you want to tie it to something like, they didn't do any work at all for Solo. They're like, this trailer's going to come out the Super Bowl, and 4 months later, we're all going to the bank. And it blew up in their faces. That movie didn't deserve to like tank as badly as it did, but even fans were just like, I'm good. You're going to be doing these movies forever. I'm good.
Right. And that's part of it too, right?
Because, like, again, you said it was baked in. Where could they possibly go beyond 2? But now it's like,
prequels
now. Then it's like, I'm done. I'm now officially done.
That's where I very much, especially with books, is when they're like, well, we're going to go beyond the book. I'm like, no, you're not. I don't need to know where he came from or what he's doing or this. I don't need to see Pennywise in olden times.
Because just like the stinger at the end of those movies are just those kids getting to the right age and, oh no, the next movie's about to happen.
Right, because now, like, that was the first time Pennywise lost, so in theory, anything before this, he just kills them all.
Just kills a bunch. Ben goes through everything. It's normally like huge incidents, factory fires, massacres, disappearances. So that's what those prequels are, and you ascend into one of those big events. It's like, oh God, and it's almost Easter. You know what that means? This was the easiest thing for them to come up with as a spin-off, because we only fleshed out a bit of it, and then we fan-fictioned the rest of it, and now we have 3 Hobbit films.
Right.
That's just what it'll be.
That's going to be the problem.
I won't be going. This was good enough. I think this is a cool experiment into doing this. Like, there are other Stephen King movies, or books rather, that are huge, and I would like to see get this treatment and like with a bigger kind of update. I think that would be fun. I mean, I don't really have like a big one that I'm like, you need to do this, but you know,
I'm good here. I mean, unless they really want to. But then even in like Stephen King's multiverse, it really is just like, well, the deadlights are here and they're there, and it's not like Pennywise is jumping around to these other places. He's not going to be in the post-credit scene of Dr. Sleep and walk out of the closet and be like, hello, Shining, I'm putting together a team.
There was that brief moment when, Beverly's back in the stall that she was, like, bullied in as a kid, and everyone's kind of putting their face through, and the bully does the, here's Johnny.
I was so irritated.
I had to ask.
I was so irritated.
I didn't care.
I didn't need it. I just was like, all right, so now in this is where I just get weird. I'm like, okay, so now in Derry, Maine... And now Stephen King...
The Shining film had already come out, and they would have seen it, so the kid would just be imitating it.
And now, to be fair, Stephen King is a character in the Dark Tower books as the writer who has to do all... So, I guess fine. Never mind.
Grit your teeth
I still don't like it.
It's just, it could have been left in the editing bay.
That was a really good sequence. And I'm like, and then we had to throw in a joke. It's like the fucking Guardians 2 bits, where every now and then I'm just like, okay, guys, we've been trying to get Yondu's fin for 10 fucking minutes. Right. Eventually, you just gotta get the fin.
Are you padding the runtime?
It's a thumb! Where was this thumb? Exhausting.
that's ultimately how I felt at the end of this movie. But because the ending solidified and closed it up, I was like, well, I'm not totally mad at it. But if you fucking come up with part 3 and it's prequel, sequel, mix, I'm just going to be like, bah.
I don't need any more. I don't really think I'll see them again. I might if someone puts it on.
I will watch the second one again from my own home.
Yeah.
I can pause it and go to the bathroom and not,
It's a movie that I really liked, but I'm like, I want to love it. I want to go buy like Pennywise Funkos and be in.
Do you pick chapter 1 over 2? You have to sit through one of them again? Because I definitely picked 2 over 1, just because I like the adults.
Yeah, maybe.
Just literally from their acting alone, even though everything I
think
just
I would.
said on this podcast, I'd watch the whole movie again on
I think 2 again.
Yeah, I don't need to see 1
I
again.
like that ending so much.
Yeah. And it is just them bullying him until he turns into a puddle of goo, but
I dug it.
But they crushed that heart, and yeah, Eddie's moment of like, this is a monster killer. And I was like, oh, I'm with all of
I like
this.
the cavern, I like the running around and him getting stuck, and we gotta shrink him, and there's other ways to do it, and you didn't tell them the truth, Mike.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yep.
It's great.
Good movie.
The movie's good. It just isn't
Peppered
great.
with bad moments.
Movies are it's okay for a movie to be fine, and it's okay to sit down and be like, here are what didn't work in the movie.
I just don't like the annoying bits that are like, you're annoying me now. Don't annoy me.
Right.
What are you gaining from? Did you really think this would be a good idea to keep doing this joke, to prolong this Cuphead villain that's just like traipsing around on the scene and half CGI? No, thank you. But a good movie. I mean, like, I don't know. I'm a coin. Flip me. It's gonna be one way or the other. It's not great, and I'll probably forget about it by next year. But I like it better than the miniseries.
Well,
and
yeah.
I think at one point I would probably try to just read the whole book. I've got no reason not to. I really love Stephen King. So.
All right. Well, that's our show, guys. Leave us a review on iTunes. Find us on Facebook and Twitter, and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.